Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon where you are in the world, and welcome to today's DevOps.com webinar. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, moderator for today's event, and I welcome you. We have an outstanding webinar today. I'm so excited about this one, but before we get started, we do have a few housekeeping items we need to go over. First of all, today's event is being recorded, so if you miss any or all of the event, you will be able to listen to it again on demand. We will be sending out an email later on today that contains a link to access the webinar on demand. And we are taking questions from the audience. So if at any time during our presentation you have a question, please don't wait, don't hesitate, just use your GoToWebinar control panel and submit your questions. And we'll take as much time as we can near the end of today's presentation to go through as many audience questions as we can. Okay, with that, we'll go ahead and kick off today's webinar, which is the 2019 Accelerate State of DevOps Survey Results, or survey results are in. We have 4 fabulous speakers today. Starting us off is Jez Humble, who is developer advocate at Google Cloud. Welcome, Jez. Thank you for joining me today. Would you like to tell the world about yourself?
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here. Yes, I work at Google Cloud as a developer advocate. I was one of the co-founders of DevOps Research and Assessment, which is the outfit that's bringing me this research. And I've written some books on software, including the Continuous Delivery book. I was co-author of that and also co-author of Accelerate most recently.
All right, great. Thanks, Jez. Excuse me. Our next speaker is on the screen, and his name is Sam Fell. And I'm sorry, I got something in my throat there. He is the area vice president at CloudBees.
Right?
I'm getting all choked up.
I feel the same way. It's very
Sam, yeah. Well, yeah. Why don't you tell the world about yourself, Sam?
Wonderful. So I get Charlene all choked up. That's my best quality. I am an electric bee. I joined CloudBees back in April as part of the Electric Cloud acquisition. This is the, I don't know, umpteenth year that we've sponsored this survey. I'm really excited to be able to sponsor it as part of CloudBees today. So thanks for having me.
All right, great. Thanks, Sam. And also we have Michael Baldani, who is also with CloudBees. He's a senior product marketing manager. Michael, thanks for joining us today. And
thanks, Charlene.
Why don't you tell the world about yourself?
Thanks, Charlene. Great to be here. Yes, I'm the product marketing manager at CloudBees for DevOptics, but also now for a new solution that CloudBees is developing around software development management that you'll hear later on today.
Okay, great. Finally, we have Brian Dawson, who also is with CloudBees, and he's the DevOps evangelist. And Brian, you choke me up as much as Sam and Michael do, so why don't you tell the world about yourself as well?
Thank you, Charlene. Yep. So Brian Dawson, DevOps evangelist. I've written far fewer and far less important books than Jez. But I have worked over the past 25 years to help kind of optimize software itself and the software development process. Most recently working with a number of organizations, Fortune 500 organizations, to help transform their processes. And so I'm excited to be here and involved in this discussion around the Accelerate State of DevOps report. Thank you.
All right, great. Well, now that I have my voice back, let's go ahead real quick and we'll take a look at the agenda for today's event. We're going to start out, Jez is going to tell us about some of the key findings from the 2019 Accelerate State of DevOps report, and he'll include some fun stats, including benchmarks and some other things. So also we'll take a look at getting better, which is also choose your own adventure. Looking at performance, productivity, culture, talk about CloudBees a little bit, the software delivery management, and we'll end with some audience questions in a Q&A period. So with that, I want to go ahead and turn it over to Jez and let him get right into it, since I know he's got a lot to cover. So Jez, take it away.
Thank you so much, really appreciate it. So yes, the State of DevOps report, it's enormous. I think it's over 80 pages this year. So we're only going to really scratch the surface of it and give you some of the key results. A little bit of history first. So the State of DevOps report has been going for 6 years now. It's the longest running and largest academically rigorous report into DevOps. The principal investigator, Dr. Nicole Forsgren, who leads the team at DORA, Dr. Dustin Smith, myself, and Josie Brazel co-authored the report this year. Over those 6 years, we've gathered reports gathered data from tens of thousands of people, from thousands of companies worldwide, to find out what works and what doesn't, and how to make things better in terms of software development. So the very first thing that I think it's important to talk about is how we measure software delivery performance. How do we actually find out how good people are? And over the years, we've found this model which measures 5 different things. Lead time, which is the time it takes to go from checking code into version control to getting software live in production. How long does that take? Secondly, deployment frequency. How frequently do you deploy? And those 2 metrics, lead time and deployment frequency, are really a measure of tempo or speed, how quickly we can get stuff done. Then there's 2 metrics that focus on stability. So change fail rate is when you push a change live into production, what percentage of the time do you need to remediate or fix it in some way because there's some kind of problem? And then time to restore, when you do have to remediate, how long does it take you to do that? So those 2 stability metrics. And then finally, last year, we added a new metric, which is availability, which is the promises you make and keep to your customers and end users about the availability of your service. So those first 4 metrics are what we call the 4 key metrics. Those measure software delivery performance. Those are kind of SDLC metrics. And what we find is that those are valid and reliable, which means that in statistical terms, that they work, that they're robust, and they measure something that is useful. And we'll talk about why it's particularly useful a little bit later. So those 4 metrics are a measure of how well you're doing at software delivery performance. What we find every year, we take the data from the survey that we do, and we turn it into clusters. We say, we have an algorithm that does this, a clustering algorithm that says, please split the results into clusters. And we find every year it splits into 3 or 4 groups of people. And we don't tell the clustering algorithm how to create those groups. We just say, create groups where the people in the groups are more like each themselves than they are like the people in the other groups. And what we find year over year is that there's a group at the top which does better at both speed and stability, and then some groups in the middle, and then a group at the bottom which does worse at both speed and stability. And that's really interesting. We're used to thinking of speed and stability as a trade-off. We're going to go faster and break things. We find that's not the case. And that, if you take just one thing away from today, it should be that high performers do better at both speed and stability. The practices that enable you to go faster also enable higher levels of stability, and high levels of stability are what enable you to go faster. So last year, we found a high performing group, which is 48% of the total, and within that, an elite performing group, which was 7% of the total, and then a medium performing group, 37%, and then a low performing group of 15%. This year, that elite performing group has grown, so it's split out into its own cluster, which is 20% of respondents, and then we've got a high performing group of 23%, a medium performing group of 44%, and a low performing group of 12%. So we don't know why those numbers change, but you can see that the elite performing group has grown substantially. The high performing group has about the same when you consider that it used to be comprised of both, but some of those high performing groups have moved into the elite performing group, which is exciting. And the medium performing group has actually grown substantially. The low performing group has decreased very slightly. So what's happening here is the medium performing group has grown. We don't know why that is. What we think might be happening is, the biggest thing about all of this stuff, DevOps continuous delivery, is it's all about continuous improvement. You're always trying to get better. And what happens in a lot of organizations is they treat improvement as a project, as something that you get done with, and then it's back to business as usual. When you don't work to improve, what basically happens is you end up falling behind because everyone else is continuing to work to improve. So this is our hypothesis about why that medium performing group has grown slightly, is because they're not focusing enough on actually continuous improvement and working to always get better. The next thing that we do is we look at the characteristics of each of those groups. So here's what we find. We find the elite performing group is able to deploy multiple times per day or on demand. It takes them less than a day to get changes live. Time to restore service in the event of some kind of problem is less than an hour, and the change fail rate is between 0 and 15%. So we only ask people in buckets. So that's why you have a range here, because we ask people 0 to 15%, 15 to 30%, and so forth, rather than asking them the exact percentage, because a lot of people wouldn't know the exact percentage, but they'd know which bucket they fell into. And then at the other end, you've got the low performing group. They're deploying between once a month and once every 6 months. Takes them between 1 month and 6 months to get changes live, because typically these people at the lower end of performance delivering releases all in one go, big batches of work. So even if they have some high priority piece of work they want to get out quickly, well, we've got to wait for the rest of the release to be done. You can't actually expedite high priority things. You've got to release everything all at the same time on the release day. It takes them significantly longer to restore service, between a week and a month, which is really quite problematic. And their change fail rate is pretty high, which demonstrates, I think, the problem with working in big batches. Releasing in big batches is pretty risky. So if we compare the high performers to the low performers, what we find is that the elite performers to the low performers, what we find is the elite performers are deploying 208 times more frequently. They're 106 times faster in terms of the lead time, 2,604 times faster in terms of being able to restore service, and they have a change fail rate which is 7 times lower, the elite performers, than the low performers. Last year, we also extended our metrics out to production and looked at availability. Availability is how well you can define your targets, your availability targets, track them, and then also learn from outages. It's about being able to make and keep promises about availability to users. The reason that we wanted to look at this is because, particularly in the modern product development paradigm, we tend to release pretty early on in the life cycle of the product, and then we continue incrementally making changes to the product over potentially many years. One way to say this, which I think might come from Jeff Bezos, I'm not entirely sure, is day one is short, day two is long. So day one is the initial development and delivery of the first version of your product, but actually if your product is successful, that's going to be massively outweighed by the time that it's in production, and hopefully you're adding new features to it and making changes to it. So that day two from the first go live of your service to retirement is, for a successful product, going to be substantially longer than the time it takes to initially deliver it. So why are these 4 or 5 metrics important? Well, we'd love to think that the reason we do all this stuff is because it's fun, and hopefully if you're doing it right, it should be fun. However, there's another reason why we do software delivery, and that's because we actually want to make things better for our customers, our users, and our organizations. So we wanted to measure the impact of software delivery performance on organizational performance. And what we find is that our elite performers are twice as likely to meet or exceed their organizational performance goals. And that includes both things to do with profit, like profitability, productivity, and also non-commercial goals such as the quality of the services and products you're delivering, user satisfaction, and other non-commercial goals as well. So software delivery performance matters. Your ability to deliver with speed and stability is really important for your organization. It makes, if you do really well at speed and stability, you're twice as likely to meet or exceed your organizational performance goals. So we've been told for years that software doesn't matter. Software does matter. strongly impacts your ability to achieve your organizational goals. So that's kind of an introduction to why this stuff matters. So the next question to ask is, how do we get better? If you're a low performer, medium performer, high performer, you want to be an elite performer. If you're a low performer, you might want to be just even a medium performer. So the second piece of the research is, how do we get better? And this year we have two models. In previous years, we've had one model. This year, we've got two models. In the first model, we look at how to impact software delivery, performance, operational performance, organizational performance. In the second model, we look at how to impact productivity. And that's one of the big things that's new this year, is looking at productivity and how to impact or improve productivity. So productivity, we're going to deal with just a little bit later. What we find, which is really interesting, is that some of the capabilities that we look at impact both. So for example, a culture of psychological safety impacts software delivery performance, it impacts organizational performance, it also impacts productivity. So some of the things that you can do, some of the capabilities that you can implement, make both of those things better. And there's some things that particularly improve one thing, but not necessarily another. So software delivery and operational performance, organizational performance, we spent some time looking at change management, clouds, your ability to actually do clouds properly, a bunch of technical practices, and then this year we also looked at disaster recovery testing. In terms of productivity, we looked at the kind of tools that you use and how easy they are to use, your ability to search for the information you need, and also to manage technical debt. So this is the full model for the capabilities that impact software delivery and operational performance and organizational performance. The things that are new this year are in bold. So briefly, just to go through some of those, in previous years, we've looked at the impact of loosely coupled architecture, monitoring, trunk-based development, deployment automation, and so forth, continuous integration. This year, we also looked at change process. And we've looked at that once before, back in 2014. This year, we did a deeper dive. And what we find is that organizations that have a heavyweight change process, which is to say where someone outside of the team needs to approve changes, for example, a change advisory board or a senior executive, that actually makes things substantially worse, which is the negative sign that you can see just to the right of the heavyweight change process box. What that means is that heavyweight change process negatively impacts software delivery and operational performance. So the best way to implement a change process that meets the goals of organizations that have requirements around auditing and so forth is to use peer review, use a lightweight change approval process. What's also important is knowing the process. So clear change process means that everyone knows how to get changes live and they're confident that they can get their changes live. That substantially improves software delivery and operational performance. I should say that we've tested these results on all different kinds of organizations, all different sizes of organizations. So this is true in large, highly regulated enterprises as much as it's true in small organizations. And we've seen large, heavily regulated organizations that have a lightweight or a heavyweight change process. These things still apply, and you can absolutely implement a lightweight change process even in a large, heavily regulated organization. Okay, I want to, and there's a lot more about this in the report. We don't have time to do a deep dive on it, but there's a lot more about this in the report. I want to switch a little bit and look at cloud. What we find is that cloud makes a substantial difference. Elite performers that use the cloud effectively were 24 times more likely to have actually implemented cloud in the correct way than low performers. What do we mean by implementing it correctly? It means that you meet these 5 requirements set out by the National Institute of Standards and Technology. Firstly, on-demand self-service, which means that If I'm a developer who's using the cloud, for example, I should be able to self-service the changes I need, like a new VM or a change to the firewall rules, without requiring that I talk to a human or open a ticket or send an email. I should be able to do it on demand. Broad network access means I should be able to access my cloud resources on any device I want, not necessarily just mandated devices. Resource pooling means we're using virtualization, so there's multiple virtual devices on a smaller number of physical devices. Rapid elasticity means I should be able to burst up and burst down in terms of the resources that I have available to me. And then measured service means I only pay for what I'm actually using. So what we find is that only 29% of people who said they were using the cloud actually met all these 5 characteristics. A lot of people that say they're using the cloud actually aren't, but the ones who really are using it are 24 times more likely to be in the elite performing group. One thing that we wanted to look at, just because it's new this year, is code maintainability. So code maintainability impacts not just continuous delivery, these technical practices, but also it reduces technical debt. What do we mean by code maintainability? It means that it's easy to change code maintained by other teams. It's easy to find code in the code base, to reuse people's code, and to manage dependencies, adding, upgrading, and migrating to new versions of dependencies without breaking your software fundamentally. So if you have this capability, it improves your ability to achieve continuous delivery, but it also can reduce technical debt. And this is the second model that we looked at this year. We looked at productivity. Productivity is the ability to get complex, time-consuming tasks completed with minimal distractions and interruptions. So that means I can get my work done. I'm not feeling that I'm constantly being interrupted or distracted. We find that actually there's a wealth of things you can do to improve the productivity of the people on your teams. And one of those things is reducing technical debt, which in turn is impacted by your architecture. Having a loosely coupled architecture reduces technical debt. Improving code maintainability, which we just looked at, reduces technical debt. Having monitoring in place reduces technical debt. The other things that you can do to reduce productivity is having useful, easy to use tools, being able to find the information you need using organization internal search, and by making it easy for developers to use external search. This is things like Stack Overflow or so forth. Those things all improve productivity. And when you have improved productivity, that in turn leads to work recovery, which means that people feel that they can separate their work from the rest of their life. When they go home, they can kind of forget about what they're doing at work and just enjoy their non-work life. That in turn reduces burnout. So productivity is really important, not just in terms of making people feel like they're more productive at work, but also their ability to maintain a good level of mental health. So as I said earlier, productivity, the ability to get complex, time-consuming tasks completed with minimal distractions and interruptions. This is something that helps us leave work at work and reduce burnout, which is super important. Technical debt, this should be familiar to everyone in a technical audience. This is introduced in '92 by Ward Cunningham to describe what happens when we fail to maintain our code effectively. So if you have insufficient test coverage, if you have known bugs that you don't fix because we have to build features, if you have old technology or libraries that are out of date, if you have implementations the team isn't experienced in, that's technical debt. How can we reduce technical debt? Well, obviously things like refactoring, popularized by Martin Fowler. Second edition of his book came out last year, just a quick plug for that. But also things like having maintainable code, which we looked at earlier, having a loosely coupled architecture, implementing monitoring. So these are all things that reduce technical debt. Reduce technical debt improves your team's productivity, so super important. And these are things that we've probably known about for a long time, but it's really nice to see it reflected in the research, that actually the research shows us that these things, maintainable code, loosely coupled architecture, reduce technical debt, that improves productivity, that reduces burnout. It's really nice to see that reflected in the research. So I just want to finish by talking about culture. Culture is something we talk about all the time. How do we measure culture? This year we used a model that was produced actually at Google. Google wanted to find out how to build high-performing teams, and so they started this project called Project Aristotle. Project Aristotle looked at how you build high-performing Google teams. What they found was really interesting and quite unexpected. The first most important thing is to create psychological safety. Team members feel safe to take risks and be vulnerable in front of each other. Also, secondly, dependability, which is people keep their promises broadly. They get things done on time and meet Google's bar for excellence. Third, structure and clarity. Team members have clear roles, plans, and goals. And finally, that people find their work meaningful and that they think that it's important, that it has impact. And this is important because culture, based on our research, has a positive impact on software delivery performance. So a positive culture actually improves your speed and stability. It directly impacts organizational performance, your ability to achieve your commercial and non-commercial goals as an organization, and your productivity. So if you have a culture of psychological safety, that actually makes your teams more productive, improves your delivery performance, and improves your organizational performance. And how do you get better? Well, by implementing these capabilities that we talked about. So that pretty much wraps up my high-level picture of the findings from this year. I know the panelists were kind of following along. And anything from you folks before we move on to the next part of today's agenda?
Yeah, Jez, this is Brian Dawson speaking. First of all, awesome data, awesome insights. It's been great to kind of see the progression of the State of DevOps report over the years, and there's significantly more depth here, a significant increase in depth here, and I appreciate it. I'm particularly interested in discussing culture with you because I think as people are developing competency with implementing the tools and technology, what I'm beginning to hear is that people are still struggling with culture. In particular, you just called out the psychology of safety. And I'll first call out that this aligns for the team. The components there that you call out align very closely with this concept put forth in 5 dysfunctions of a team, where you first need to build trust. So then once you build trust, you can have candid conversation. You can then hold each other accountable. Once you can hold each other accountable, you can have impact. But it starts with psychological safety. So I think one of my questions for you, Jez, is in your experience, what can our audience members do to implement, start with implementing trust, vulnerability, and taking risk as noted under psychological safety?
Yeah, and I think you quite rightly point to leadership. I think leadership has, and just to be clear, I use this word leadership. Anyone can be a leader. Leaders are not just the executives. Middle management plays an important role in leadership. Individual contributors play an important role in leadership as well. I think leadership is really important in creating psychological safety. My experience is that it's about walking the walk. It's very easy to say, we're not going to punish failure, but then when something goes wrong, what actually happens? People see that and they respond to that. So I think the most important thing is, actually people in the organization at all levels need to demonstrate that when things go wrong, we actually find out how to improve the system rather than punishing people, and that's actually what happens. And it's seen to be what happens. So I think walking the walk is really important there. And then, just making sure that information goes from the grassroots up through the organization, and then it's actually acted on, rather than everything being kind of top-down command and control. And again, that needs to be seen to happen. It needs to be seen that when people raise problems or issues, or even just ideas for how to improve things, those get taken seriously and acted on. And then finally, I would say, the big thing is it takes a long time to build up trust. Trust can be destroyed in a second, just by one bad move, and then you've got to start from the beginning, basically. And that's so it requires a lot of dedicated work over a long time, and there's going to be failures there as well. And so you've got to keep working at it. Basically, you're never done with it.
Yeah, I think I find that we're trained to be much better at dealing with the hard science, right, of technology and tools than the soft science. And I find it interesting, just to underscore one of your comments, Jez, that we did a survey at DevOps World, Jenkins World, of a 50-person audience doing a culture panel. We asked how many people truly work in a no-blame culture, and I believe about 3 people raised their hands. So that kind of underscores your first point. It's easy to talk about, it's harder to implement. Thanks.
So, Jez, quick question for you. I love the fact that we're seeing this cohort, the elite cohort, start to separate away from the pack. And you mentioned something during that talk track about, the idea of continuous improvement, and that we're getting sort of soft in the middle with the 44% medium performers. It seems like those folks haven't embraced the sort of continuous improvement mantra. Do you, the idea of a virtuous cycle, or of people who are able to improve themselves and improve the way they improve themselves, is that playing in, do you think, to that elite set of performers? They're able to learn from how they're improving and learn from how they're operating in a way that helps them virtuously sort of improve even better?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think what you see is that elite performers are always trying to get better, and they're always looking for learning opportunities, and then they're able to actually take those learning opportunities and apply them throughout the organization. So those learnings aren't siloed. There's a great book by Dr. Stephen Spear called The High Velocity Edge, which I know Gene Kim is very keen on, and it's a great book. I think it won a Shingo Prize, where it talks about exactly that. It's your ability to learn quickly, and then take those learnings and spread them through the rest of the organization rapidly, amongst other things. So I think that's right. And that goes back to the psychological safety thing. In organizations where you have psychological safety, people feel free to experiment more often, because they know that, if something goes wrong, it's not going to be the end of the world. And so when you can experiment more, you can learn faster, and then you can improve faster.
Yep. Very interesting. All right. Thank you. Michael, any comments from you, or do you want to get started with the next set of content?
No comments. I mean, you and Brian covered a couple of questions that I actually had in my mind when Jez was going through the content. So thank you for that.
And I see lots of great questions from the audience coming in as well. And so we will try to get answers to some of those. And this will be available for those who are asking. This webinar will be available for download post viewing.
Excellent. Thanks, Sam. And I'm just going to spend the next few minutes really talking about kind of going beyond DevOps, right? So a lot of companies today, as Jez mentioned, we have elite and high performers who are doing DevOps really well, but there's still a challenge out there for organizations that are really looking to make software delivery a core business process, but they're still struggling to do that. And that's, a lot of it is due to more disconnected teams, tools, and processes outside of the dev and ops area, right? So when you look at, just this content here, this quote from a large bank that is a customer of ours, that we know they're mature in their DevOps practice. They've been doing it really well. I would consider them a higher or even an elite performer. But the fact that they still need that better visibility to be able to measure the business impact and connect the software development delivery practice across the rest of the organization. So beyond the development and ops teams, to not the executive level, to the product management level, all the way to marketing, sales, and support. That's key to really being able to measure how software delivery gets in the hands of their user and how it's making an impact to the business. If they can't do that, they're going to struggle to become really competitive in the market that they're in. So, again, frustrations and frictions still exist even in companies that are doing DevOps really well. When you look at the core group, right, within Dev and Ops, there's still questions around, why is this feature being built? Who asked for it? Why is this work being blocked? How can I really reduce waste? And even on the ops side, right? Did the feature truly pass security and QA? But when you extend beyond this group, the challenges become broader, right? When you have executives asking, how are we delivering what customers need? You got sales and marketing saying, how can I solve my customers' needs? What can I do to make sure I'm getting that into the hands of my customers and I'm getting the correct feedback, all the way to support, where they may be asking, what is that feature? When was it enabled? How come I didn't know about that? So there's a clear lack of visibility and insights that goes beyond the dev and ops groups across the business, the entire business, and the cross-functional groups within that business, right? That really need to be pulled in so that the entire group, the entire team in that organization has all the visibility, all the insights. They know exactly what's going on in the software delivery process so that they can all be doing the things that matter to get that software into the hands of their customers, but also get the feedback loop for faster iteration.
Mike, can I chime in here?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, and I just like to add that we as Cloud Bees went out and interviewed tens of people to get a better understanding of what their experience with software delivery was, where they felt they had improved with CI/CD and DevOps. And what we found, to underscore what Mike said, is that even when people are addressing the 4 key DORA metrics, that sometimes what's getting lost in the sauce is we are performant in terms of DevOps. We are capturing feedback from our application that's being deployed and factoring it in to the technical process to reduce debt, etc. But visibility has not been given to a number of other stakeholders that are key to not only ensuring we have a performant app, we have availability, we can recover, etc., but that we're actually truly delivering the intended and expected value to customers. And what happens is we're finding that what people run into when they're not addressing these pain points that are called out, you risk running into situations like a button or part of the user experience is wrong, and you start to see drop-off rates on a given web page. You start to bleed customers. And if you're not actually capturing that feedback and sharing it all the way back to the design phase, for instance, you risk not being able to respond fast enough to capture and retain those customers. And there's a number of other scenarios that we've run into. But Mike, I just wanted to jump in and call out that what we've captured here is driven by a number of interviews. And it's not to say that being an elite performer in DevOps is not of very high value, but that there are additional problems that today's organizations need to address. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. So, just as DevOps isn't all about automation tools, but it's more about just fundamentally reconceptualizing the way the development and operations departments work together, software delivery management is about becoming seamless and connected, right? It's about changing the way all the functions in the company think about and collaborate to deliver software. And SDM, or software delivery management, really does help, is a strategy and a vision where we really want to break down those silos. It's going to provide that visibility across an organization into the software development lifecycle, but it also relies on 4 key pillars. First and foremost is just common data, where all the information across all the tools is actually captured and stored in one common domain for everybody to access. And by having that common data, now those cross-functional groups will get and have universal insights, or that visibility that I talked about earlier, that really helps them understand and learn both up and down and across throughout their functions and an organization to understand where everything is in the software delivery process. And by having common data with universal insights that everyone can access and see, you now have a connected process. So no longer do you have different teams doing with different tools and different processes. You have a single process that's connected across everybody in the teams that really helps orchestrate software delivery, but also connects those functions together to efficiently bring ideas to market, right? And it allows you to max out the value by getting that software into the hands of your users, and also getting the feedback loop back to the folks so that they can iterate faster. And then lastly, that all leads to all functions collaborating, right? Now you've got an organization where you have executives, you have product groups, you have sales, marketing, support, all working together towards a common objective or set of objectives, right? To not only drive value for customers using your software, but also to have measurable business outcomes, and how delivering that software faster and better to your customers is actually impacting the business itself. And then basically, the pillars really do support a unified system of record, right? With all the functions that enjoy continuous insights, feedback, which results in faster software delivery, and again, a positive impact on that business. Everyone in the business is operating from the same set of data, which is available in real time in one place for everyone to access.
Yeah, Mike, this is Sam. If you think about the Gene Kim sort of the three ways, where it's holistic system level thinking and feedback loops, when you start thinking about if I'm a business that's trying to modernize and I'm trying to quote unquote digitally transform myself, or I'm trying to deliver more services to my customers that are dependent upon software for delivering those services, and you know, who among us aren't moving that direction, then giving these different teams that same level of fast feedback, and to Jez's point earlier, the ability to experiment, to be able to take risks, calculated risks, and understand what that impact is, really, I think, helps set companies up to take advantage of that virtuous cycle that we were talking about earlier, with moving from a high performer to an elite performer, or from a medium performer to a high performer, or wherever you're starting, right? The good news for the folks that are listening is it doesn't matter where you are today. You could be buried in technical debt and have all the things working against you, but if you set about to try and implement changes to correct some of those behaviors, incremental changes, as long as you stick to it, over time you're going to be much better off than the folks who are the elite performers today that aren't doing anything to improve. So I think the whole idea of getting the functions collaborating, and getting all of that information in their hands so that they can make better decisions, is critical to the ability to really improve your overall organizational performance.
Yeah, absolutely, Sam. Again, by having that seamless connection across all the teams, and you've got a good sense of now collaboration, right, and communication. So again, everyone's working towards the same objectives and goals in that software delivery process, right? Making sure that they're getting the right thing that the customers want, which will in turn make an impact to the business, right? And that's going to drive your performance up.
Yep.
Cool. And then lastly, I just want to let folks know that CloudBees is starting to build out a solution for the software delivery management vision or strategy. And it really is a way to orchestrate the entire software delivery lifecycle and tie together all the software development tools that you already use, automating the repetitive parts of the process, but also providing a collaborative platform across that organization that is really based on the shared common data that I talked about earlier. This solution really help a business have more insights into the process, and therefore really help them make software delivery a core business process, right? So you've got executive level, you got finance, you got sales, you got marketing, and now you have software delivery as a core business process within that company. And then just lastly, for folks who are interested, we are inviting customers, users to sign up for a preview program to test out the CloudBees solution for SDM. I will caveat this by saying you're getting early access to the preview. It means that you're getting access to a solution that's still under development, right? But it also provides a great opportunity for preview candidates to partner with us and actually provide feedback and influence us in the direction as we build it out. So the links are here. You can either go to the link in white in the blue box, or the first bulleted link will also take you to the same sign up page. And that's it for me. Thanks for everybody's time.
Fantastic. So we have quite a few questions that are coming in. We've been answering a few of them as they've come in. For sure, these slides and the recording will be made available. You can also download a copy of the actual report, the full report. There's tons of great information in there. But there are quite a few questions that are coming up, and maybe we can go through a couple of those.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you, Sam, do you want to go ahead and ask the questions, or do you want me to take the lead?
Well, I'll ask the first one here. So Gordy was asked a little bit more detail on the MTTR stats. He says less than 24 hours is a pretty broad time frame when speaking of a high priority outage. Does the report have any further sort of granularity, Jez, or are we looking at that as the granularity?
So the key here is to look at the table that I showed earlier. I don't know, Michael, if you can go back to slide 6. I don't know if that's possible, but there's a table which shows the performance profiles. And there was another question about this, which is, how do you define software delivery performance and the elite, high, medium, and low groups? Yeah, slide 6. That's it. So this is how we define those different groups, and you can see here time to restore service is the third row. Elite performers are able to get changes in less than an hour, high performers less than a day, medium performers less than a day, low performers between a week and a month. We ask again a reasonably high level of granularity, so less than 1 hour is the fastest option we give people, and then between an hour and a day is the next level. So that's the level of granularity. High performers, it takes between an hour and a day to get incidents restored. We don't know any more detail than that.
All right, great. So Kumar asked a pretty interesting question. Improving software delivery and quality is considered as an IT improvement. It involves investment of time and resources. We find a challenge with the business organization approving such investments. How do we understand the value in terms of cost and quality to convince business why this investment is important?
That's a great question. We actually have a white paper on measuring the business benefits of DevOps, the return on investment. If you go to cloud.google.com/DevOps, which is where you can also get the report, and scroll to the bottom, you'll see you can download that white paper, and it's very detailed, gives you a lot of information on how to calculate the benefits. But a lot of it flows from this thing that you can see here, this table. Well, for example, say it currently takes you a day to restore service in the event of an outage. Well, how much money are you losing every hour your service is down? You can turn that into a number, and you can say, well, listen, it's costing us this much to restore service in the event of an outage. And if we improve it, we can save ourselves this much money. You know how often incidents happen. Change fail rate, the same thing. You can say, well, our change fail rate is currently 30%. If we can get it down to 10%, again, we can save this much money. So you can put economic benefits on all these things. You can put economic benefits on the ability to deliver more frequently. If you deliver once every 3 months, right now, even if you have a high priority thing you want to get done, it's going to take you 3 months to do it. Imagine if you could release it in a week. Well, you can calculate the economic benefit of being able to do that. So all these things, you can calculate the economic benefit, and that's how you can make the argument to invest in these things. And again, all of these capabilities are driven by, we show what they're driven by. They're driven by your ability to do continuous integration, your ability to do test automation, your ability to do deployment automation. Those are the capabilities that drive these outcomes. So you can make a direct link using our research from, why should I have a CI solution? Why should I invest in test automation, through to the economic benefits of having a high level of software delivery performance.
Yeah, and there's a tongue-in-cheek response as well. I forget who to attribute the quote to, but it's to the effect of, you are not required to adapt. Survival isn't mandatory.
That's the W. Edwards Deming, I think.
Yeah, it's a brilliant quote. So eventually, I think whatever organization you're in will start to feel pressure from competitors who are all becoming more elite performers, and so that should help to spur them on. Go Tom has another interesting question. For Mike, is there a timeline for availability of the early release version of the CloudBees solution for SDM?
Thanks, Tim. So we have a preview program now that has some basic capabilities in the solution right now, and then I would say in the next several months we'll go to a limited availability, and probably less than 12 months we'll have general availability. But again, it's based on what we get for feedback from the preview program, making sure that we're delivering obviously the right features that our audience and users want, so that they're getting value on using the solution to make sure that it's doing exactly what they need from a software delivery management perspective. But if you're interested, feel free to go to the link and sign up for the preview program.
Very good. Let's see. Brian, you had some questions that you had put forward earlier. Any of those you want to pop back to the top of the stack?
No, I think actually the questions that you are tracking are in line with my thinking, Sam. So thanks for tapping me.
So regarding productivity improvement, this is from Biswajit, and forgive me if I'm butchering your names. Regarding productivity improvement, is there any data on the companies where the developers or operations members have to spend time on call rotations and its impact on morale and burnout?
That's not something we've actually looked at, and it's a great suggestion. Actually, we're always on the lookout for things we can look at in the future, but we haven't researched this. I don't know if any of the other panelists have. I've got stories. But I'm sure you've all got stories.
Yeah, exactly. One of the questions that had come up earlier, and I think there's some really interesting data in the actual larger format research report, was about different verticals. Can you go into some of the details, Jez, around the different verticals that were responding to the survey and some of the interesting findings you saw?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we find in general is that vertical doesn't matter. So we have responses from many different verticals, healthcare, government, insurance, education, telecoms, energy, and we find in general there's no difference. Highly regulated large companies can be high performers, tiny technology startups can be low performers. One thing we do find this year, which is really interesting, is that retail, for the first time ever, we've got one vertical that actually has a measurably different impact on performance. Retail does better. And we think this is just because there's so much competition in the retail industry that you have to do really well in order to succeed.
Yeah, they're again back to that Deming quote, right? You don't need to evolve. Survival is not mandatory, and in the climate that they're operating in, they are definitely under siege by lots and lots of pretty tech-savvy competition. This is a question from Idan. What would you recommend to an enterprise of 2,000 plus devs with an infrastructure team to help promote a DevOps culture and practices other than buying the great Accelerate book for everyone? Big smiley face.
Wow, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. So again, if you go to cloud.devops.com/devops, sorry, cloud.google.com/devops, I should say, then you'll find articles on each of those capabilities, and just above that, there's an article on transformation, how to transform. I think the general principles that I've seen be successful, and I'm sure the other panelists have opinions on this, is find a team to start with and try things out and experiment. And as you find things that are successful, push those out to other teams, and don't try and transform the whole organization in one go. Take it team by team, find out what works and what doesn't. And experiment. Don't do a big bang 2-year DevOps transformation. Think about where do we want to go? What are the measurable outcomes we're trying to achieve in the next year? What can we do in the next month that would show improvement and that's measurable, that we can measure and show, and keep experimenting, I think. But I'm interested to hear what the other members think.
Well, Jez, I think you said everything that I have said and would have said, partially informed by you, but also by my experience. The other thing I'd add in is when you're determining where do you want to go, how do you measure that, it is important that you honestly assess where you're at, right? And that also means involving not necessarily everybody, but appropriate cross-section of views and experiences, from individual contributors to middle management, to the various functional groups. As it's hard to plot your route to where you're going without truly understanding where you're at today. So that's all I'd add, Jez.
And then the other thing that I would add is, if you do download the full report, which I definitely recommend you do, there is a section in there about, what are some of the stickiest ways or the most effective ways of helping your organization adopt some of these practices. And there were some pretty surprising results, whether it's a center of excellence versus sort of a proof of concept versus a dojo. There's been a lot of noise about some of those different practices, and understanding which one of them. Obviously, every organization is going to be different, and they're going to have different needs and different ability to sort of drive those types of programs and get benefit from them. But from the folks that you in the cohort that you surveyed, I was rather surprised by the findings, and I'll leave it like that so that folks have to go and download the report in order to get the goods.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. That's absolutely right. We have a whole section from page 70 onwards which talks about what works and what doesn't.
Right. Yep. All right. I think Charlene would probably say this is the last question. Charlene, is that accurate?
Yes, and it has to be very, very quick because we only have 2 minutes left to the top of the hour.
That's right. That's right. So, I'm trying to find one that's very quick, and I'm going to spend all my time finding the quick one.
Well, I'll tell you what, then I will let you off the hook by closing out the question and answer period and just letting folks know that if we didn't get to your question during the Q&A period, please know that the folks at CloudBees are getting a copy of all the questions. So if we didn't get to it during the event, they'll be more than happy to follow up with you guys offline. So fear not, your question will be answered. Is that good enough for you, Sam?
Yeah, I suppose so. I'm sort of pounding my fist here going, darn it, I should have been more ready. I certainly enjoyed the conversation. Lots of really great questions. As always, lots of interest in this data. People want to figure out, is there a cheat sheet or a shortcut to getting better? And I'll just go back to what Jez said earlier, is it's all about incremental improvement and understanding the types of impact that you're having when those improvements are made. But thank you so much for having me on this panel on the webinar.
Yeah. Well, we have Michael, if you don't mind just pushing your slides all the way to the call to action slide at the end, so we can show that to the audience one more time so that they can get any necessary information that they need. But I do want to remind the audience that today's event has been recorded. So if you missed any or all of the event, or if you just want to listen to it again, you will have the opportunity to do so. We are going to be sending out an email following today's webinar that contains a link to access the webinar on demand. And as we mentioned earlier, the slides are going to be available as well. So everybody will be able to get a copy of that.
And just on behalf of the DORA team, I'd like to say thanks so much for having me, and thanks so much to CloudBees for sponsoring the report this year. We really appreciate it.
Excellent, excellent. Yes, a great presentation overall to everybody who was on today's webinar, Jez and Michael and Sam and Brian. So thank you all for your time. Want to also thank the audience for joining me today. This is Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm signing off. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Charlene.
Thank you.